Anyone hear me now? Yes? Awesome. Okay, great. So Sharissa is going to try one more time. I appreciate you guys being on. So I'll give you a little rundown and just a couple of announcements before we get started. Then there's a worksheet that goes right hand in hand with what we're going to talk about today, and it's kind of it's got some basic things on there, but it's something that'll help you follow along. And if you want, you can utilize that to help you help you remember things from this webinar, and it's going to be recorded, and you'll get a link and stuff. So we're going to try one more time. But in addition to that, a couple of things. Here's a little rundown on what we're going to cover today. At the very, very beginning, one thing that Sharissa is amazing at is just having a really positive, competitive nature, and she's one of the most positively competitive people I've got a chance to work with, and really able to utilize that to drive her in the right direction. We're going to talk about strengths, and we'll talk about really the difference between information overload and mastery. That's going to be a big part of today, and also a few of the tactics and things like that you can utilize on a daily basis to really help you improve yourself. So make sure you pull up that worksheet, and we'll get started in a few. Yeah. Persistence. Awesome. Guys, welcome. This is our very first webinar, so I appreciate you sitting through the kinks with us. Can you hear me, Sharissa?
Yeah, I can.
Awesome. Okay. It worked out. Very, very cool. So I was just telling them about the worksheet that we put together, and also I gave them a little rundown about what we were going to talk about. So let's jump into it, though. But for those of you guys who don't know Sharissa Sosa, it's really, really interesting because I feel that there are a few people in your life who you just need to latch on to. And very quickly, Sharissa has been that person in my life, and she's done a ton of stuff within the business. She's at $430,000 in career sales. Most of that was done over the last 2 years. She was the number 2 rep in the nation the last 2 years. And one thing, if you didn't know any of that about Sharissa, but she actually had one stint in the business, left the business for a while, and then came back, and then really set the world on fire. And what's cool is that she was number 2 in 2014. But then the second year around in 2015, she actually found a way to repeat her results with working a lot less, and by really maximizing her skill level and her level or circle of influence. And she's really been able to find a lot of opportunity through challenge. A lot of people, I think it was less than I know for sure less than $1,000. Maybe was it less than $100 the first year? In 2014, how much?
But I sold 17,000 my first year.
No. The first Silver Cup, when you came in number 2, how much did you miss out on Silver Cup by?
$150.
So it was $150 difference between number 1 and number 2, and a lot of people would have caved under that, and maybe not found not duplicated that success, but she came back and did it again, and did it working less and putting actually less time and spending more time with her family, and more time with the people that she cares about. So I know that you guys will be able to get a lot of value on the sales end from Sharissa. So there's a chat box on the right. If you have any questions for Sharissa or myself, you definitely can throw those in there. But yeah, welcome, Sharissa. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for everybody here, it's really valuable to have Hector also, because he did go the traditional route that a lot of you guys are on, as far as going to college, getting a marketing degree, right?
Yeah.
Went through all 4 years, sold Cutco during college. So there's a lot to say about that too, because that is rough. I really respect a lot of people who do that. And opened up a branch. Went district, did $1 million the first year, 1.4 the second year, and then he won a Silver Cup. And there's a lot to say about somebody who's a champion and is number 1 in the nation, won the Silver Cup. And still, after all that schooling and everything he's learned through Vector and his outside mentors, he still continues to thrive and learn. And I don't think there's one person, that I know other than Hector that's really so passionate about personal development. More than that, sharing that with other people. So he still continues to thrive and learn. And I really respect that also about you, Hector. So I think that the both of us here on this, there's a lot that people can get from you too.
Appreciate that. You mentioned being a national champion, and I think what a lot of people don't know is that the first year was really rough. It was for a lot of different reasons. I didn't have a division manager. I didn't have a division. I was the only office in my entire area, and it was just rough. There was a real downtime where we were like in jeopardy of closing. If we didn't ship enough business, this week, we might not be open. We might not be able to just afford to be open. But it was through personal growth and through some mentors that I pulled myself from my bootstraps, and I think that's a big reason of why I feel so strongly about sharing it with other people, is because I know that I was not in this place the whole time. There was definitely a lot of challenges that came with being a new manager and being like in this new adult world and stuff. So it was a real journey for sure. And I feel like I'm still on the beginning of the journey, but it was a real progression. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're awesome, man.
Can you tell a little bit about your story? I know that you have such an awesome, I know you think that it's like no big deal because you did it and you're like, oh yeah, of course, like that's what people do. But you had a really unique, just kind of struggle. Really, can you share a little bit about that before we kind of dive into the material?
Yeah, I tend to make this story long, so I'll try to make it super short. But when I came back to Cutco, I was at 17K in career sales, and I told Evan, I said, dude, I got rent due in like 2 weeks, and he didn't know this, but my phone had just gotten turned off, so I couldn't even, that's why I started making phone calls in the office, and had about $5, literally $5 to my name, and I took those next 2 months, it was October of 2013, to really, really opportunity to thrive and use the power of broke to make a change in my life, and reached out to the right people. Invested in myself a lot, and just had no choice but to grow really fast. And so that following year, after this struggle, is when I decided to go for Silver Cup. And that's when I sold 190. I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't struggle. I wouldn't have not been able to do that if I didn't struggle,
I love how you're just like, oh, no big deal. I went from 17 to 1, and then the next year I sold 190, and it just happened. So we're going to talk about what some of the things that you did to make that quantum shift, because I'm sure there are a ton of people who would love to go from 17 to 190. That's almost a 1,000% increase in sales. So that's a huge quantum leap. So let's dive in, should we? Let's give the people what they want. Okay, so one thing that I think is super awesome about you is you were one of the most competitive people that I know, but it tends to be like a really healthy competition. You seem to you're not the doucher, you're not the jerk, you're not the jerk about it, but you tend to have a very healthy sense of competition. Can you talk about the first key and that first kind of blank on the worksheet, which I think is one of your biggest strengths?
Yeah, I think, early on I learned the hard way comparing myself to other people, especially when I first got started, seeing all the CSPs and wanting to be in that circle. I remember trying to break my brain, how could I possibly sell $2,000 in 1 week? And this guy over here is selling, just had an $8,000 week, and so that, creating that space to be healthy was a challenge for me. And I remember Peter, my mentor, would always tell me, Sharissa, stop looking at the reports. You're comparing yourself to other people. You have no control over what somebody else does. You have 100% control over what you do. And so a lesson that I learned the hard way was comparing myself to myself and being comfortable with looking at my previous results, my previous week, what I did last year, and saying, how can I grow just a little bit more, and really zoning in onto growing just a little bit each day. Does that answer your question?
Totally.
There's more that I could go on that, but
yeah, I mean, one thing that I think you tend to have a competition with mostly yourself, right? I think that's who you seem to be in most competition with. So can you talk about just kind of what your thoughts are on having a healthy competition with yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think the same way that we like want to be number one, want to beat everyone. I think that if you were to sort of look inside yourself a little bit and say, okay, well, let me look back at a time when I really did thrive. Like, when was I really super passionate? When did I really like pedal to the metal and saying, okay, like how can I replicate that, but what were the action steps that I did that took me from 0 to 100, and what were the little things in between that made a big difference for me? And so I still to this day, like I look at my calendar from that year and look at how crazy I was with my time, how crazy I was with like saying no, and how I use that to serve me today is, I'll look back on my week last year. I'll look back on what I did last month, and just try to grow a little bit more from that. So instead of looking at the reports of what other people are doing, like it interests me to see how my friends are doing for sure, but I look at it with a different purpose. And I look at my reports for the purpose of growing, unless I don't look at the vector reports, like the national reports, for the purpose of growing, really, I look at it to see as an opportunity, like, wow, Jason Jeffries just had, $20,000 a week. That people do spend that much. It is possible, and so it's also a reminder. It's a reminder of the opportunity that we have and what's possible. So that's kind of the way that I've chosen to look at the competition.
That's cool. So I remember as a newer rep and as a newer manager, I would kind of separate myself and looking at the reports almost, if I wasn't in the right mindset, would kind of be a negative thing, right? It would actually kind of hold me back a little bit and kind of discourage, right, a little bit. So I think it's about seeing what's possible. I think that was a really big thing that you said. So that first blank is redirecting your competitive nature, right? You want to redirect your competitive nature and really, really utilize it. Do you have any tools, anything that you do? You mentioned looking at reports, or what do you do to kind of maintain that competition with yourself?
I do a lot of reflecting. And I do a lot of reflecting. I look at my calendar a lot and see what was I focusing on. I look at my weekly plan. Like when I plan stuff, I put it on a sheet of paper and I reflect on that. Like, what were my focuses? Who was I reaching out to? When I was like really thriving, what was going right? What was going wrong? What was the in between? Where was I growing? What were my weaknesses? How can I? So I really do like take time and ask myself all these questions. And I think that the people who take that little time to reflect on what they did, reflect on what they were doing right, reflect on what they weren't doing that could have been better, reflect on who they were reaching out to, who was their like core support system. That's so important. Who are your cheerleaders? Who's there to like give you wisdom? Reflecting on the people who are in your front row, right? And just doing that again. Like, we all have that greatness in us. Like, whatever you did before that you were just like, holy cow, I can't believe I just did that. We've all had moments like that where we've made leaps, that increased our belief in ourselves, that increased our capacity. We all have moments like that. If you were to just look back on that and ask yourself, how can I replicate that? Like, what was going right? What was I thinking about? What were my habits? That's big. What were my habits? When I was really thriving, what were my habits? How was I waking up? How was I showing up? What were the things that I was okay, like, missing out on?
And we all have those things in our lives that aren't, oftentimes they're not Cutco, right? When I'm working with a lot of my reps, a lot of times it's sports or it's school, or they're really passionate about being in a play or being in theater, and they spent, one of my assistants, I'll give a shout out to Taylor Salisbury. We were having a conversation, and in high school, he would spend like 30 to 40 hours at football practice. Like it was a full-time job, and I was like, I said, you paid to be there. Like you had to pay for your jersey, you had to pay for cleats, right? And then now we're not willing to give 30 to 40 hours to the thing that's going to create a fulfilling life for us. Like, that's kind of interesting, So we've done it before.
And we can do it again. Let me piggyback off of that really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try not to ramble. By the way, if I ever go too long, feel free to cut me short and be like, okay, move on. The same way that we're like, okay, we'll do 3 hours, we'll do 40 hours for this thing that we're really passionate about. It helps us feel good. It grows our confidence. It's fun. We enjoy it. Think about how many times I was just having this conversation, with somebody I'm working with. Think about how many times somebody you love and respect and adore, maybe your mom, maybe your girlfriend, maybe your manager, maybe somebody's important to you, say, hey, like, would you mind going out of your, these aren't those words, but would you mind going out of your way? Would you mind like staying an extra 30 minutes to like help me clean up? Would you mind, staying an extra time to do this? Would you mind like picking up the kids for me? I know like my mom asks me that all the time. How often we go out of our way for other people to please them, to make them happy because we love and respect them. And it also fulfills us because it makes us feel good because we're able to provide and be there for them. Think about how many times we fail to go out of our way to take that time to do something that fulfills us.
Right.
And I remember like when I really adopted that idea, like my life changed. Like I started saying no way more often, and I started really going out of my way for my own fulfillment, and a lot of times it won't make sense to a lot of people when you say no, or when you do wake up an extra hour for yourself, so yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of that. I think that's huge, that a lot of times
when we have SC2 push and we go, MIA for 2 weeks, it's people don't understand, right? But I think it's healthy for us, so that's cool. Awesome. Let's move to the second bullet point in the key mindsets, right? And if you think about, these are these overarching themes that are really going to make a sustaining change in your, not only your business, right, but also in your life too. So number 2 is info mastery versus info overload, right? And we talk about like mastery, that's the blank for number 2. And when you think about mastery, there was a couple of things that Sharissa and I, when we were putting together this talk, we talked about 2 things. We talked about a lot of things, but one of them was mastering your strengths and understanding your weaknesses. And for me, this has been such a huge part of my breakthrough and understanding and my confidence and my sustainability and really what's led to me creating the office that I have and the lifestyle that I've been able to live. And it's really come from me identifying what are my strengths and then understanding and almost compensating for my weaknesses. And one tool that I'm a big believer in, and just because it's something that I learned early in my career, was the CVI. And I'm a banker innovator, and that's just someone I'm more cognitive based. I'm more introverted. I've always been someone who's just loved to be, honestly, I enjoy being by myself. An awesome Friday night is huddling up with a book or a YouTube video or a documentary and just chilling out. And I think growing up, I felt weird about that. Like that was kind of weird because the cool people were the ones that were really gregarious, really talkative, and really enjoyed being around people. And for me, it just wasn't natural for me. And so just understanding that gave me the emotional what am I looking for? The emotional space, so that when I do get tired after running a team meeting, that it's okay. It's not a bad thing to take some time and to decompress a little bit. So in talking about that, really mastering your strengths, I think is really important to double down on it. And so I think one strength that you have, Sharissa, and the reason I love working with you, and why I kind of had a great partnership, is you are really incredible at taking action, and you're really incredible at taking massive immediate action, and I think that's one strength that a lot of people have. So can you talk a little bit about that, and kind of what compels you to really make action and activity a big part of who you are?
Yeah, let me write that down. I'm writing a lot of stuff down right now. I'm going to write down that question so I can come back to it in a second. What makes you take action was your question, basically?
Yeah, I feel like that's one of your strengths. But if you could just, maybe you can build on strengths a little bit and talk about that.
So building on your strengths, one thing that I heard you say, Hector, is basically what you said is that you found a way to like own the core you. Right. And that's your strength. Your strength is that you enjoy spending time alone. And so you take that time to thrive in it, and I think, and what makes you take action on that, understanding that this time that you have by yourself is valuable. Why is this valuable? Asking yourself, why is this valuable, helps you take action. So if, okay, what is maybe something that you understand as a weakness for yourself, Hector? And then we can piggyback off how do you, I like to know from you, like, how does understanding your weaknesses help you master your strengths?
Well, for me, like, a big weakness is perfection, or even a fear of failure. So, when I was a rep, when I really thought about it, my hesitation with making phone calls was either them, saying no, or me having a bad phone time, right? Or, not setting up a whole lot of appointments. So there was that fear, but what I didn't realize is that fear was present. I didn't understand that fear was there. So I think that understanding your weaknesses, if you can notice that fear, oftentimes that's what creates the most fulfillment, is moving towards that. Putting on this webinar was something like me and you were both like super fearful about, and like super scared, and is anybody going to show up? Is it going to be any worth it? But I think that when you move towards those fears is when you start to really see some leaps and bounds in your progressions as a person, and then when you do that, then you see leaps and bounds in your progression in your business, because you're moving past those barriers that are oftentimes self-imposed. So I think that understanding your weaknesses and noticing that fear will help you to double down on your strengths, because you're able to put them in the correct box, and like you said, reflect on why is it valuable, and taking action on that. So does that make any sense? Does that help?
Great. Yeah, that's perfect. So yeah, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about fear, but let's talk a little bit about mastering your strengths.
Totally.
So think about areas of the business, of your life. Think about your relationships, where your strengths are, in that, maybe you're strong in communication, and that's why you enjoy being on the phone. Maybe you're strong at connecting with people, and that's why you enjoy doing demos and asking questions during your appointments, or in your relationships. How can you, like, if you're naturally really good at something, this is something I learned from Berghoff, if you're naturally really good at something, become the master at it. So if I'm teaching someone something, I want to really know it like the back of my hand, like and this is how you want to maximize on your strengths, and maximize on the opportunity on your weaknesses too. So how do you maximize on your sorry, I kind of went off. I kind of confused myself a little bit. So like asking yourself, like, who can I reach out to who's a master at this? Right. It's a simple concept, but understanding what you're already strong at so that you can learn more about it and become a master.
Well, for me, it's first being aware of it, right? So, I think another strength that I find in a lot of people, other than taking action, is someone who likes to get information and knowledge, and I think that's a strength that's needed. And then there's people who are really good at reflecting and asking questions and finding solutions. So I think the first is being aware and identifying it, and then spending time in that strength. And I it almost took me. I almost stumbled on it by chance. I hated reading. At least I thought I did. And one of our mutual friends, Hadil,
Love her.
she actually challenged me to read 50 books in a year. And I found out this new love and this passion for reading and absorbing knowledge, and it just made so much sense to me because I was able to spend time in what I really enjoyed. And the cool thing is that almost unintentionally I saw massive gains in my business and massive gains in my lifestyle. So I think spending time in your strength is the next step. So if you find yourself, if you're someone who just takes massive action and just wants to shoot first and then aim, I think it's really important to understand that. And then those people I find really learn as they go. So they need to kind of understand that they're not going to be perfect, but those people really learn as they go. And then me, quite frankly, I'm the opposite. I need to aim as much as possible, and then I can fire. So I need to give myself that space to do the research, to spend the time learning, so that when I am executing, that I feel confident. I think it's important to spend the time there and really double down on that. And really, that's the first thing that you want to build on is your strength. So whether that's knowledge or whether that's action or whether that's, I think a lot of other people have relationships as a big strength of theirs. And so they can cultivate those relationships early on and really leverage those first, because that's where their, natural ability is, and then utilize those relationships to help get them better as they continue to grow at the other skills. And so I think spending time is a big part of that.
Absolutely. I think that this is something I was reminded of the other day is looking at so I'm going to touch on two things. What makes you take action in connection to awareness and results, and also something you mentioned about our good friend Hadil. Never underestimate the power of influence. Never underestimate the power of influence. Never underestimate the power of influence. Like how someone can influence you in a big way and how you can influence someone in a big way. And this has two sides to it. Let's say you are that person who really just gets it done. Let's say you are that person who, I believe in having a good time, right? But what if you're that person who everybody has to say no to? Because you maybe, or somebody who's a distraction in your life, who just spends a lot of time having a good time, and doing things that just don't serve you, creating a habitual. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So paying attention to who's in your front row, and if you are that person who parties all the time but still manages to get things done, imagine if you didn't and you just had to laser focus and doing that. And when you are that person who or somebody who's that person who parties a lot and still gets it done, and I think this is relevant. I think this is very relevant because we all have friends who do get things done, and we all have that one person, maybe two people in our life who, even though they do have, maybe our best interest in mind, but think about how that influences, think about how those actions influence you and them, and do some reflecting on that and how you influence other people based on your actions, because you really never know who's watching. You never know who you're influencing, good and bad.
Right. Yeah, I had a chat with one of my staff about being the influencer, not being influenced, especially by someone who's maybe not. I don't want to say as high. They were just someone who was maybe struggling, both financially and within the business. And I think that you want to be attaching to the people who are going to pull you up, not pull you down. So I think that's a big part of it too.
Absolutely. I thought I turned my notifications off. Let me.
You also, one thing that we want to quickly touch on in terms of mastery that I know is a big part of you and your success is just maximizing your resources. You've done a really good job of elevating your circle of influence really, really quickly. Within a matter of 2 years, you've really built a quality front row and a quality set of mentors and partners, and even have a lot of mentees that you're now working with. But what can you talk about that, and why circle of influence has been such a big part of your mindset and your success?
Yeah, I think that having a really strong circle, this is something that, isn't really new to a lot of us. But thinking, like, if you have people around you that are thinking bigger, or on the same road as you, chances are you're just forced to show up a little bit bigger. And before I go deep into that, I'll just kind of backtrack onto how I did it, why I did it. One thing that Berghoff talks a lot about, and actually John Vroman originally kind of made this really valuable to me, is the power of curiosity. And I would even, if you're listening to this, I would even write down, maybe if you're taking notes, like, how can I be more curious? And being curious means taking action behind that curiosity, figuring it out. How did this person get there? How can I get closer to this person? Being curious about someone's results, being curious about the world, being curious about the people that you have in your life, I think is huge, huge, huge. The only reason that I grew really fast and grew my circle is because I was curious and I wanted to figure it out. And I remember getting my FSM promotion towards the end of 2013 and seeing all the CSPs in the back room. They didn't know who I was. And Evan was just saying, like, how much they've accomplished, how much money they made, the lifestyle that they had, how much they traveled. And I remember just being like, holy cow, like, how is it that these people sell knives and have this lifestyle and can live on their own and can travel and do all this stuff? Like, doesn't make sense to me, but I have no choice, but I'm going to figure out how to do it because I want to live by myself and I want to travel too. I'm going to figure it out, and those people are going to be my friends. This is literally, and I repeat this a lot to a lot of people because that was the thought that I had in my mind. I'll never forget that moment.
What did you say to yourself?
I said, I don't know how the heck these people do it, but I'm going to figure it out, and those are going to be my friends, and we're going to be really close. And I just, decided it, and it sounded kind of crazy even in my head, saying, I remember even, just picturing it, we're going to be close, it's just going to happen. And it just super organically happened in a way that, two things. One, I wanted them to know that I was worth their time. How did I do that? I showed up with results. I was growing really fast. I went from thinking, how can I have a 2K week, to thinking, how could I have a 5K week, and just made sure that I wasn't striving to just to bam out of nowhere, flip the switch, but I was focused on progressing and making myself noticeable. You want to be so good that people can't ignore you, right? And so that's what I did first. I just made a lot of action to be like, hey, dude, I'm also a rock star. So let's spend some time together. And there's very few people, and I see this now, there's very few people who have the courage to reach out to people who are doing things at a higher level than them. And even it just never hurts to ask, people are more than willing to help you if you're willing to ask. And I remember a couple times, with Shane Nagel, Eric Gilman, they gave a couple talks at a team meeting, and one was about, I remember Eric gave his talk about flatware, and I was like, hey dude, do you mind if I call you later and just ask you about that script again? Cause I didn't get to write everything down. And he was like, yeah, sure. So I called him the next day. He thought I wasn't going to really follow through on it, but he told me the next day, he's like, hey, you know what? Out of those maybe 40 people that were in the meeting, you're the only one who reached out to me. to ask me questions.
The only one.
The only one. And that didn't make sense to me. And Shane Nagel said the same thing. He was like, you know what? Like, there was 2 people today who asked me questions. You're the only one who like asked if you could call me to get some clarity. And so that made me feel good. So see, there's little steps that I took to make myself noticeable, being so good that people couldn't ignore me, and gaining the skills. The only way to gain the skills is to work a lot. And, you know, fortunately and unfortunately, that's how that, you know, Jim Rohn says that, I think. The only way to gain the skills is to really see what you're capable of. Like, what if you max out your schedule, whether you're a manager or a sales rep, chances are you're going to get better at the interview. If you do a lot of interviews, you're going to figure it out. If you do a lot of trainings, you're going to figure out how to get better at training, right? And so, yeah, so 2 things. So I just did massive action to gain the skills and make myself noticeable. I had the numbers to be respectable. 2, I was in their face, you know. Anytime I would see them in the office, I would ask questions. I would like dip my head in and be like, hey, how did you do that again? Like, so I stayed curious on how it worked. And there's so much that goes on in between that, as far as like what I learned, the courage that I got to ask, and understanding that these people are humans just like me. They have the same fears, you know, they have the same roadblocks. We breathe the same, you know, and not being intimidated by that. And that's, you know, that same skill is what helped me grow relationships outside of Cutco with people like John Froman, who's a dear friend of mine too, and Hal Elrod and John Berghoff, etc. And so, having this, I wouldn't really call curiosity a skill, but you can gain the characteristic of being more curious and having the courage to reach out.
Totally. I think it's I'm getting some weird feedback here. It just seems like for me, it's about attacking like specific areas that you need help in. I think that for me, it was really about identifying where I needed to get better. And one thing that I don't know if I heard it somewhere, and if I didn't, then I'll coin it. But is if you're trying to get better at everything, you're not going to get better at anything, you know. And I think that was what I was trying to do the first 24 years of my life, was just get better at everything. And I really was pretty good at a lot of stuff, but I wasn't great at anything. And when I identified what my strengths were, I could really hone in on what I could be great at, you know, and it be in that top really 5% of. And so I think for me it was about specific learnings, and that came a lot of through podcasts and resources, and you know, I paid over a lot of trainings, and you know, both online and seminars, and obviously we're in a group as well, but I think for me it was about seeking that knowledge and seeking those answers, and being really specific about what answers I needed to get.
Yeah, and again, it all comes back to staying curious, right? The only reason you seek the knowledge because you were curious about it.
Right.
And that's something, you know, we can learn a lot from kids, right? They always ask so many questions. You know, when they ask so many questions because they're so curious, because they know that they have so much to learn. You know, no matter where you're at in life, in the business, you have so much to learn. I have so much to learn. Like, it's almost intimidating how much I have to learn. But asking myself constantly, what's the one domino? What's the one domino that I can knock down, that I can learn, that's going to help everything else, you know, that's going to help me in all these areas.
Well, that's a good transition, actually, because you talked about dominoes and what's the next one. And I think that's actually our first skill in the next box, is actually setting up your dominoes for you know, as a next generation goal setting, and really figuring out what the most, you know, that most important thing is. So just kind of as a segue, just so we can keep moving along the worksheet here, the first, or actually number one in essential skills is next generation goal setting, and there's a video on the page about it. But really, what it is, it's about having a much larger perspective on your goals and your daily actions, because we have to understand that the actions that we take today play into the results that are going to be that final number at the end of the year, at the end of the next 3 years, and eventually the final number at the end of our life, or whatever it is. Like this, this today counts in our life. It's not like all of a sudden they start counting, after we hit 30, or, all of a sudden your life starts mattering after 4, I think that if we can understand that today matters just as much as any other day, then it gives us a ton of urgency today. It makes today important. But then I think the last thing, which I learned, is it gives us the emotional room to take action on things that are significant. Because you should say
that again. You should say that one more time for people. I don't think they heard you.
Okay, if you didn't hear it, so I think it's important to do the things. Well, I'll say it a different way. I think it's important to do the things that are urgent, right, and that are sensitive, time sensitive. I think it's important to do the things that we have to get done. But by having this type of perspective, it gives you the emotional space to take action on the things that are significant. Because too many times we say, "Oh my goodness, I have to do this because it's due right now," and that's totally important, or that's totally fine. We need to get those things done, but we also need to understand that there are actions that we can take that will make results and impacts on our week, on our month, on our years. And if we can take those most significant actions, oftentimes the important and the urgent things start to matter less and less. Those significant actions are the most important. So that's kind of the why, right? But if we talk about okay, so what the hell do you do? Here's a really quick, simple things. There are, I think there's five parts to it, 6 if you count the last one. But for part number 1, right, is that you got to understand your purpose. You got to identify your purpose and really understand what ties everything together. Because all of the goals that we set, all of the actions that we take, all of the efforts that we make should be in alignment with this purpose, because that is what's going to give us fulfillment throughout today. Like for me, I think we talked about earlier today, like you waking up and feeling like Christmas today, saying like, it's not time to wake up yet, because this, even though it was very scary and, took a lot of time and effort, was very fulfilling for us. So I think that we have to, take those actions. But so having that purpose. So the next part of that, though, is the yearly goal, right? Because I think for me, one thing I got caught up on is trying to figure out what 5 years would look like from now. People say, "What's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan?" And I'm like, I have no freaking clue. I have no idea. I told my staff, like, if you were to think about 5 years back, the things that we did on a daily basis, the apps that we use, the technology that we use, the websites that we frequented, are totally different from the stuff that we do today. So to try and predict and send that into the future 5 years is kind of tough, but we do have a realistic idea of what 2016 is going to look like. We do have a realistic idea of what the end of the year is going to look like. So can you set a no matter what goal of what you need to get done by the end of the year, right? I think that if you identify what those 1, 2, 3, or however many that you need to identify in order to move you towards your purpose, well, now all of a sudden you can start making some big strides in it. So once you figured out what your yearly goal is, we'll break it down even further. What's the one thing you need to accomplish this season? And I know a lot of people are getting prepped for a summer, big summer campaign. So what do you need to sell this summer in order to be on pace to hit your yearly goals, in order to be on pace to have a fulfilling life, right? I think that when you break it down that way, it becomes much, much easier for you to take action like today. And you can see where it's going. But once you figure out what you need to accomplish this summer, figure out what the one thing you need to accomplish this month, right? And it's April 21st. So maybe you think of what do you need to accomplish by the end of May, right? But I think it's really important to set those kind of smaller deadlines, because I remember when I didn't have that, if I were to just have a yearly goal, well, all of a sudden today didn't matter as much as if I were to have a summer goal, a monthly goal. And then now I've even started to create weekly goals based on those quarterly goals. So if I look at or those monthly goals, I say, what if I need to accomplish this much this month? Well, then what do I need to do this week, right? And then the last step is, you look at that list of weekly tasks and what do you need to do today in order to accomplish those? And it's really interesting because you can very easily see how today's action and activity and effort line up with really your bigger vision and your bigger purpose and your fulfillment. And it makes it so much easier for you to feel good about doing the things that you don't necessarily enjoy doing, because you can very easily see the bigger picture. So that's next generation goal setting. And you may say, Hector, that's super basic goal setting. Well, totally. And I think that for me, it was less about knowing it and more about, was I doing it?
Yes.
So that was a big determinant.
That's huge. And so I have a question for you. And one thing I wanted to say for anybody who's listening to the recording or listening live is I'm sure there's a lot of new things that your ideas or whatever that you're hearing that you're like, okay, that's a good idea. I can put action behind that. I'm sure there's a lot of things that you've heard before, but the way to make this as valuable as it can be to you personally is ask yourself, like, am I doing this at the level that's necessary for me to get where I'm at? Am I doing this at the level where it's necessary for me to get where I'm at? And like, get real with yourself. So if you're hearing something you've heard before, like you're talking about next generation goal setting, yeah, it's basic. We could spend an hour and a half on next generation goal setting. It goes way deeper. That deserves a lot. I don't think it's as basic as you think it is, or as people listening would think it is. I think that's huge. One question that I think maybe people might have for you, Hector, is what do you do, or what questions do you ask? What action do you do? How do you reflect on why? How can I ask a better question? How can people gain clarity on why their results today matter, or why their actions today matter in 5 years, in 2 years even? Sometimes 5 years to think about it is scary, like you said. So let's try to connect, with that. But how can people gain more clarity on their 2 year, 3 year vision and connect that with today? What do you do to gain more clarity on that?
I think you have to take action on those things, because it's cool. The cool part was totally setting it up, right? And getting that the first setup and saying, okay, here's the first time I did it. The cooler part was the next week after taking action on those significant goals, and then realizing that I was in a totally different place than the week before, and I was like, man, I have to redo my goals because of the actions that I took that week. I was in a totally different place, and I was like, man, I need to set higher goals. It was exciting because I was seeing progress. I was seeing results. Things were like happening, like personally exciting things were happening. Like, it was totally silly, but like getting 100 Facebook likes on our Millennial Skills page was like something that I had written down, and I was like, oh, maybe it'll happen one day. And then we were at like 50. And then because I had written it down, my brain was thinking about how I could do it and took some action. And now we're at like 120 or something like that. And it was just, that gave me fuel, that taking action on significant things gave me fuel. We had a good, I dove back into a different part of our business, and I started doing more PDI, which I had been delegating for a while. And just because it's something that I naturally don't enjoy, is not making phone calls. I'd much rather be running a training or, doing some of the strategic stuff. But our business needed it, and we saw some results, and we have a good shot at being number one for our push that ends tomorrow. So it's cool seeing results from the actions that you take. And I think that gives you a lot of clarity on what's possible in 2 years and 5 years, because it's like, man, if I can keep doing this on a weekly basis, who knows where I'll be in 2 years? Who knows where I'll be in 5 years, because of the gains and the growth that you're seeing on a daily basis.
Yes. Oh, that was so good. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching this again. I feel like I can learn so much from hearing all of it.
To respect people's time, let's move just to the last bullet or the last skill and it'll kind of build into this last tactics part. But just so we're going to be on for a little while, so if you guys have questions and stuff like that, we're gonna be on for a while afterwards. But just so we can squeeze the worksheet into an hour, the last skill is building momentum, right? Building momentum. So, and that's kind of interesting because I talked a lot about that with, what I just kind of ranted on was really building momentum through those significant actions. I think is a huge thing. And you talked a lot about some things that you could do to build momentum. And I know you've talked a little bit about it, but one big tool that you use often is reflecting. And I know in our preparation, you talked a lot about that. So the first tactic for building momentum is actually reflection. So can you give a little bit on why you feel reflecting is so important?
Yes, absolutely. I believe reflecting it's that internal tool that we all have, that if we created a habit out of it, we can recognize where we're growing, what are the in-betweens on what we did to grow. This whole webinar is a huge reflection. Every time you plan your week, you're reflecting, projecting the future, right? But you're also, and that's why planning your week, like a little action step to do while you're planning your week is reflecting on your past week. Some of you maybe already do that. How can you do it at a higher level? How can you really dissect it with the, I was going to say microscope. That doesn't make any sense. How can you really look at it and say, what are the in-betweens that happen? Did I wake up on time? Where did I waste time? Where was I thriving? When was I excited? What were my peak states? Like, when did I have the most energy? What is it that fuels me? And that's a huge reflection on, like, also what are your strengths, and mastering on that. So I think when it comes to like emotional intelligence, that's something a lot of times that's hard to track until you recognize, like, wow, I didn't react to this situation how I would have maybe a year or two ago. But that's the power in journaling. And that's why I feel journaling is such a huge part of personal growth, because you can look back on your journal, on what you journaled about, and be like, wow, like this thing really affected me, and look back on your journal from last week and, whoa, I really did grow in this area. Reflecting is also huge because it's just another way to learn. It's another way to learn from yourself. I think that, yes, we strive really hard to reach out to the right people for knowledge. But there's so much wisdom that we have yet to tap into, because we don't take the necessary time to really sit down with ourselves, quiet our mind, being aware of what we know, and asking ourselves the questions to dig out the answers. Mm-hmm. And that's what's been huge about me hiring mentors for myself, is because a lot of times they'll ask me questions and I'm like, I could have totally asked myself that question and got the same result, maybe, but there's so much that we know that we've yet to bring to full fruition. We don't know that we know yet, because we don't put pen to paper and start to get curious about like what's really going on in our heads, because we think a million things a minute, like we're so distracted. And it's so huge to just have one thought, write it down, and build off that. And sometimes my journals, like especially in the morning, here's a resource for you guys. If you Google morningpages.com, there's this like older woman with gray hair talking about it. It's like a 5-minute video, totally valuable. And she just talks about the power of journaling and how you gain so much more clarity. And by gaining clarity, you know how to move forward. You know how to reflect on your past in a healthy way as a learning lesson. And, sometimes my journals are like, oh, I'm so grateful for this. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I need to take the trash out. I forgot to call my mom. This is what's going to happen today. This is why I'm excited. What am I proud of? Like, it's just random stuff that I just dump out on my head because I can walk into my day with more clarity. That's also the power of reflecting. You have so much more clarity. And because you take the action to get curious about what's going on up here. So much going on.
So I think a good way to help you with that, though, is just so we can finish up the last two tactics here, is to find someone to hold you accountable, right? So I think that's something that's really helpful, is just finding someone to hold you accountable to doing the important things that you need to do, right? So holding you accountable to those significant actions. So I would encourage you guys to identify who that person is, who that person can be. Maybe it's someone, on this call here. If you guys can, there's a comment box here. Of course, you guys can utilize, the fan page, or obviously me or Sharissa, if you guys want to reach out to us. But I think finding an accountability partner is super huge and helpful to just to building momentum, right? Which is what a huge skill is.
Yeah. Go
ahead.
Could you talk a little bit about how to find a quality accountability partner? Maybe not your best friend, Could you talk a little bit about how does someone find an accountability partner that's really going to hold them accountable and really is also going to be that person to follow through? What can someone do to find a really good accountability partner? So rip on that for a little bit. I got to be real. I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back. And then I'll talk about it if you want.
Sure. So let's I think finding understanding what you need out of an accountability partner is super huge. So there's some people, like for me, one of my accountability people is my manager, J. Brad Britton, and he's my division manager, and he really provides just a nice sounding board. He's a super merchant, and so he just likes to talk. And Sharissa is also another accountability person, because she really helps with taking a lot of action, and really just encourages me to step out of my comfort zone as well. So I think it's really, really helpful for you guys to do that. The last, I'll finish up the worksheet here. The last blanks are seeking information and taking action. And we've kind of been talking a little bit about that, but it's seeking knowledge. We're seeking info, seeking knowledge, and taking action, right? Because I think that those are the two components of what's most important for us to see gains and growth in our results, right? You for sure have to find the answers, but then once you have the answers, you have to take action. So this hour here that you guys have been on, and I want to thank you again for investing your time into this. And if you enjoyed it, I'd love to hear about it. If you hated it, I'd love to hear about how we can make it better. But the only way that you're going to get something out of this webinar is if you take action, right? If you actually do something with the results. So if you actually do something with the information. So if you actually reflect and you think about, what are your strengths, right? And you actually start to identify and double down on your strengths and actually start to do something with your strengths, I think is a huge way to take action and actually see some results. Maybe a way that you can take action is actually finding an accountability partner, right? I think that's a really helpful thing to do, something that you can see results from, right? So taking action, I think, is a big part of it. So there's some action steps down there at the bottom of the worksheet, right? Number one action step is to set next generation goals. And you guys will get a replay of this, so you guys can go back and you guys can take a look at that. So you want to set next generation goals. Really, what you want to do is you want to have significant goals, right? Goals that are purpose-driven and significant. The second action step is to find an accountability partner. What I would encourage you to do is send them this link. Have them sit down and watch it so that they can understand what the hell you're talking about and why you need an accountability partner. But like Sharissa's back on it. I mentioned the most important part of finding that accountability partner is understanding what you need from that person and how can you benefit and give value to that person too. So if you're someone who is more strategic and more someone who's going to keep a schedule and remember things, that's something that you can provide to that relationship. If you're someone like Sharissa is, who just provides a lot of energy and wants to get things moving, then that's what I mentioned that I enjoy from you, Sharissa, as you as a accountability person for me. Just help me to take action. So you got to understand who you want and what you want out of that accountability partner. That's the second action step. And then the third is to commit to one extra resource of learning Or, I find maybe it's one other person that you can reach out to. So one other person that you can either add value or gain value from. But I think it's important that, who was I listening to? I think it was Vern Harnish, who wrote one of my favorite new books, Scaling Up. He said, you can't put out what you don't put in. And he's talking about, into your brain. So you have to learn in order to get better. So you can't put out what you don't put in. So I would encourage you to commit to one resource and to do this look at this, review this on a daily basis. What I do is I have my goals in my phone. So every time that I'm just thinking about, I don't really know what I could do right now, I pull out my phone. I actually have it saved on my Evernote, so it's always there. And you can see I have a picture of my goal setting board right there. So I can always see it all the time. So do that as often as possible. And I think that you'll see some really, really big gains. Okay, so we kind of wrapped it up, Sharissa. We finished the worksheet. We still have some people on, so if there's any questions or anything that you guys would like to ask, we're going to open it up for a Q&A. We've got some more time here that we've set aside. So is there any questions? Let's see. Do we have any? There's no questions in the thing.
Guys, I would encourage you guys to think of a question that you haven't asked someone yet. Think of I would encourage you guys to ask questions in the thing. Can we tune someone in if someone wants to?
Yeah, I guess so. Totally.
Okay. Margaret wants to know where she gets the worksheet.
Let me post a link. You'll find it in your email. I know there's a ton of them, but let me just post the link.
Also, one thing I wanted to, this will kind of make some time if you're thinking of a question. If I could share a quick personal story about accountability that's recently happened, I guess you can say. So one thing that I understand to know, and something I repeat very often, is who you are today is who you are going to be in the summer, right? In the next 5 years. Think about that. Who you are today, the actions that you have, the habits that you have, the people that are in your life, what you're doing now, how you're thinking, is who you're going to be in the summer. So a lot of people wait till a week before, the fair starts, for example, the week before push to start their miracle morning, start reading, start practicing their scripts, right? And it's so important to build, as talking about building momentum, doing that now, because you can flip a switch, but if you're not that person now, and you flip the switch when your office opens or when the fair starts or whatever you got going on that's big in the summer, then chances are that switch isn't going to stay on for very long. Because you're not accustomed to that momentum. You're not accustomed to those actions. How powerful are habits? You're not accustomed to those habits. And so building whatever habit you need to build for your summer, building that now and asking yourself, what's that one domino I need to knock down? What's that one habit that if I totally did it every single day, no matter what, it would absolutely transform my life, my business, whatever is huge. So with accountability is really awesome because so my accountability partner for Miracle Morning is Matt Foss. He's a rock star in Arizona, and it's so funny because sometimes when I'm super on my Miracle Morning, I have been very recently, I'm totally excited about it. I'm yeah, man, ready to wake up tomorrow. Sometimes he isn't as disciplined when I'm super disciplined. Right. And so we build each other up that way. Sometimes when I fail to do it and I'm lacking discipline in it, he's super on it. And so because we're able to find that way to harmonize together and support each other, so huge. If I didn't have Matt to keep me accountable, I probably wouldn't be doing it consistently. And that's huge with accountability. So
that's great. And Donnie had a question. He said, for me being somewhat secluded, how do I find an accountability partner? And it's really, I think you said Matt's in Arizona.
Yeah.
So Donnie, what I would say is, I know you're actually in our mastermind group. So what I would encourage you to do is to find other things where virtually you can do that. I mean, I think that I'm in a pod group where I have 2 people that are from Denver, one's from Sacramento, and another one's from Utah. one's from Chicago, and so we meet virtually on a Google Hangout, and it's cool because I think that there's something with this face-to-face thing that really goes a long way. So Donnie, what I would encourage you to do is something that Hal actually mentioned to me, was to create a list of who are your growth acquaintances, right? Who are your growth acquaintances and the people that you would like to spend more time with, right? The people that you would like to get more time with, the people that you would like to influence you more. And then the next step, though, which was like a total duh, was like, how can you add value to them, right? Like that's the first step, is like just add value to them. Like, hey, maybe you're like, man, Hector's a really awesome guy. I wish I could get more time with him. A really easy way to make, get, some brownie points with me would be to like share this webinar, right? And like, just share this with a friend, because that's obviously going to help, that's going to help me. That's going to ingratiate you with me. So I'm not saying you have to do that, but who are those people that you can just add value to, right? Or drop a quick, text to, if it's a friend or something like that, a quick, reaching out. But I think being intentional about those people, you never really know where they could lead. We did that. Donnie knows firsthand. We did that with a small group, and I had no idea about if we would be able to create anything sustainable. But we've created a really cool mastermind group that it really has a mind of its own at this point. But I think, Donnie, identifying who your growth acquaintances are, right? Who are those people that you'd like to spend more time with, reaching out and adding value to them first before you start asking for anything, and then continuing to do that, right? Just because one person doesn't necessarily respond or doesn't, go on a date with you the next day, you keep reaching out and keep being intentional about that. Doing that at a 10x level, I think will start to create some cool relationships for you.
Yeah. Also, Donnie, I had the pleasure of talking to you the other day. I think you're awesome. And I think that there's a lot, like, I don't think that you're secluded, even though it might feel that way, because maybe where you're at, or maybe not, I don't know, whatever makes you feel secluded. Maybe try to, those same reason that makes you feel secluded, think about how it actually is serving you. Because the words that we use to define where we're at is huge. So I think that you have a really powerful circle in the group that you're in, and you have a really powerful circle with Vector. And at SMC, you're gonna be surrounded by so many people, and just saying, hey, dude, like, I really respect you, even if you've never met this person before, but just saying, hey, like, this and this is really important to me. This is how I want to make a change. Tell me what you want to make. Tell me like what you're committed to. How can we help how can we support each other? Boom, done.
I love it. Hopefully that helped. And Margaret, the link is in the chat, so you can get it there. It says people are still on, so
yeah. So what's up?
So yeah, we've got some more time. It says, Donnie says, do I find a partner who needs the same kind of accountability? So how do I find a partner who needs the same accountability? Is consistent phone time.
Yeah, okay. So do you mind if I put my little 2 cents?
This is yours.
I think it is valuable to have an accountability partner that has the same goal as you. That can mean a lot of different things. Consistency, there's so many different ways in our life where we could all be more consistent. So if the goal is consistency, start there. Hey, bro, my goal is to be more consistent in X. Where are you going to be consistent in X? You could have 2 different, or Y or whatever. It's different. Let's hold each other accountable to stay consistent.
So a similar type of, I like that. It doesn't necessarily need to be the exact same activity, but if there is a theme or a value or some sort of habit that you are building, that's really powerful. I like that idea. Very cool.
And then, like exactly like you said, Hector, like taking it off yourself and why it's important to someone else. Why are you valuable to someone else? Why are you valuable to someone else? Ask yourself, why am I valuable to this person? Before you go and reach out to them, One, okay, this is why I'm valuable. This is what I have to offer. I think that we could support each other. I think that we could support each other. Not like, I think you'd be great for me. Don't use those words. I think that we can support each other.
We can support each other, yeah. It's not like, I need you. Here's what you can do for me.
Nobody wants to. I mean, it's fun to hear, but like, yeah, no.
Totally. Donnie, does that help? Is that helpful?
I think he's nodding. I don't know. I have a fun question for you, Hector.
Okay.
What's your favorite fruit?
My favorite fruit are strawberries. Strawberries.
Why?
No, I lied. You know what? We actually at my parents' house they have a blackberry bush, and backyard blackberries are the best thing ever.
Why?
So I don't know. I think there's something really. It just tastes better when it's like when it's grown and when you've grown it and when you've seen it kind of come to fruition. No pun intended. But yeah, I don't know. I really enjoy it more than other fruits.
Cool.
What about you?
I don't think I have a favorite fruit.
Oh, lame.
But I do. I eat bananas every day. I eat grapefruit every day. I have kale every day.
There you go. That's the secret, guys. That is totally the secret. Is there any other questions? It still looks like we have about 7 people on or so. I don't want to waste anyone's time, but we do have about 10 more minutes blocked off to be on. So I see a couple of future managers out there, a couple people I've never met, so I'd encourage you guys to reach out. Sharissa, you had something to say?
Yeah, I'll just kind of like buy time while people are building up the courage to ask questions.
Get out of your comfort zone.
You talked about urgency earlier, and something that I wrote down is we talked about urgency, we talked about fear. And something that's really big is having a healthy fear of death. And understanding that one day, someday, we are going to die. And asking yourself, how do you want to be remembered? And that brings value to why today matters more than any other day. Why your actions today matter more than any other day. And so having a healthy fear of death, knowing that your life is valuable today, knowing that you can make a change in your life today, because today is the only day that matters, and staying 100% present with that, because the more present that you are with your day, the more mindful you are of how you spend your time, who you spend your time with, what your actions are to create the results that you want for the future, for 2 years from now. And just really keeping that awareness, because the people who thrive at the highest levels have death at the front of their mind. Like, this is a fact. Like, they know, like, people know this. It's not a secret. But using that to serve you, not scare you. I mean, for you in a good way, using that to serve you and scare you, good. Whatever works for you. Everybody ticks a little bit differently. Yeah.
Wow. No, totally. And I remember the first time I got exposed to that idea was in a sports psychology class, and I didn't get it at that time. It didn't make a lot of sense to me because I just don't think it was packaged the right way. But if we're clear on that, then it makes today a lot more important, because this is the only day that we really have. I think that's a huge thing. And
it's so
Margaret,
grateful we get to spend it doing this.
I know. I want to spend a shout out and thank Margaret for being on. She had a little thank you in the comments there, but I appreciate you investing in yourself. That is really, really huge, and I'd love to connect more for sure.
Hey, really quick, and then we don't have to spend a lot of more time because nobody's asking questions. But you guys can fill like whatever you connect to. We would love some feedback.
Totally.
So if you're watching this, it would mean and I know we say this like as salespeople, it would mean the world to me if you did this, but it would really mean so much to us if you emailed us individually. You don't have to email both of us. Email one of us and say like what was like the main takeaway that you got. Why was it valuable to you? We would love to know that. Because it helps us grow and think about how we can add more value, how we can build on that. Because we don't know unless we ask. And so it'd be really valuable if you reached out to one of us. So my email is SharissasSharp Sharissa Sharp @gmail.com. And you can also add me on Snapchat. You should add me on Snapchat. And you should add Hector on Snapchat. And if you have your phone out, get your phone out. I think, can they just take a picture of that?
Yeah,
if
they
I
could.
do that?
I think so.
Oh, my battery's low. Do this now.
Do it now. Do it. Do it.
Do it now. Okay, your turn, Hector.
Okay, let's see. I should be quicker on this.
You have perfect timing, man.
Boom. All right. Oh, there it is right there. Okay.
Donnie said, did you see what Donnie said? Thank you, Donnie, for that. He said their snaps are lit.
I love it.
Okay, really quick, and then I'm done. So something that kind of occurred to me the other day, and I put this in a snap. I don't know who saw it, but I was feeling really inspired, and like my heart was big, and I was coaching all day, and I just felt like, wow, this world's so awesome. And they said, I was feeling really big in my heart. Like, you ever have that moment where you just feel like really big and like deep in your heart? And I said, my fire is lit. And I was like, my fire is lit. Imagine if like you ask somebody how they're feeling, and they're like, my fire is lit. Like, what kind of energy does that bring to how you feel, So if you want to use it, abuse it, you should say it. I think it'd be cool to just, my fire is lit. Like, I'm on, It's kind of a cool way to describe how you feel. If you really do feel like your fire is lit, what does that mean to you? Your fire is lit.
Very cool. We have another webinar on, it's a little different. It's actually going to be on nutrition and like health. And I have one of our mutual friends, Megan here. Megan Lyons, actually. She's someone who's super awesome and super knowledgeable in the health, in the nutrition field. And she actually just wrote a book and is a health coach and has given her time to our community. So she's going to be on Monday morning, and she's going to really be talking about how, as branch managers, I remember for me, I wouldn't eat really in the morning, and then at night I would come home and eat a Santana's California burrito every night. And it was literally the worst thing for my waistline, my energy levels, my CPO. So she's going to talk about how we, as active kind of solopreneurs almost, and managers too, can be healthy on the go. So that'll be great. Get signed up for that. Look out for the links for that too.
Listen to everything she says. She's ridiculous, amazing. She's a master at her craft.
Yeah, she's really smart and awesome. Sharissa, do you have anything for the people before we sign out?
Yes, I do. What's easy to do is also easy not to do. Jim Rohn.
Boom. You heard it here today. Thank you guys so much for being on. I know a few of you I'm going to see a little later, so I'd love to get some feedback from you guys in person. But thank you guys so much for being on today. I do appreciate everything, and you being a part of this journey with us all.
Thank you.
Later.